Welcome back. This is the Corruption Scorecard here on ENCA in conversation with Sabelo Skiti and Thabang Motsohi about SAA. Sabelo, let me throw this at you. It's easy to diagnose and say, you know, the Guptas working with Malusi Gigaba and people like Siyabonga Mahlangu, I believe his name was, his advisor, as well as the guys from Jet Airways, basically elbowed SAA out of the way in as far as the Johannesburg-Mumbai route is concerned. There was that, debt restructuring issue that was at play, and those contributed. But a lot of you guys don't pay attention to the issues such as Coleman Andrews and the evergreen contracts such as jet fuel, etc. How much do those weigh in the equation of why we find ourselves where we are today in as far as SAA is concerned?
Look, I think all of that, has an impact that it's had on where we find SAA today. For instance, one would even go as far as to say, had the Coleman Andrews, decision not been taken by him, rather the decision to sell the fleet, had it not been taken, SAA would have been sitting in a better asset base than the SAA that you saw now, which was, leasing the majority of its aircraft. And some of those leases were very unproductive for what the company wanted to do. It was literally burning money in the air because some of these aircraft were quite old. And then you look at, the other corruption as well. Luckily, the debt restructuring really didn't have an impact that much on the company because it never went through, of course.
That was close, eh?
It was very
close.
That
was a close call.
That one would have probably accelerated the death of SAA.
Just summarize it for people who are not familiar with it. I mean, it's that whole situation where SAA's loans were due for repayment, and basically there was an attempt to get someone to secure a loan of 15 billion rand for them, and they got this company.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, what this was basically going to be an idea where, when you consolidate debt, so that you're paying one installment, you're winning on interest charges and all of that. But how they went about it for me was rather interesting. So the CFO at the time, Wolf Meyer, had begun a process with a company called Seacrest, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
They had gone the entire way, all the way up to the board. They had done due diligence on this. They had verified that there is funds. They've looked at, who the company is and all of that. And then the chair at the time, Turumieni, basically didn't support this. And she basically wanted this thing to be restarted. And of course, it was in the restarting where we saw, quite a lot of interesting developments. They chose a company called BNP Capital, unknown in the finance world, what you would call a boutique finance firm, to come and do this. But initially, their original tender was to give advice on SAA and how to embark this. And then suddenly, while they're doing that, they then write a letter that says, we can actually secure these funds for you ourselves.
Yeah.
They then, of course, with the aid of Dudumieni pressurizing the executives, try and get this thing done. Fast forward, this thing doesn't, of course, make it as well because the media, we'd started asking questions.
Sure.
And I remember we ran an article that basically said, these guys are not even registered with financial services board. Basically.
Imagine borrowing 15 billion rand from someone who's not even registered.
The risk that comes with that. So that then gets abandoned. But then what they try to do is that they try to retrospectively pay these guys about 250 million in cancellation fees that were unnecessary because there was no contract. There were no negotiations about any cancellation. It's the type of wastage that, is very much the norm at SAA.
Thabang Motsohi, talk to me about, as we're having this conversation about this organization, BNP Capital, and this whole issue around the debt restructuring at SAA. What has been the role of consultants, consultancies, and people who make things happen, turnaround strategy experts over the years? And what does that betray about the state of, our readiness and capability to administer some of these institutions that we very easily call strategic entities?
You know, Julius, one of the things that you must understand is that consultants are, are in many ways, suckers of some kind. When you allow them, a small opening, they will come in and as long as they can, because they charge on an hourly basis. It's time-based pricing. Now, the longer they stay, the better money they make. The other question that I always, raise with clients is, why do you need a particular advice at a particular time? Do you know exactly what pains you? Why did you go to a doctor or this particular type of doctor if you make consultants equivalent to that type of professional service? You must know why exactly you need it. You need that assistance. And when it comes out with outcomes and outputs, you must know exactly what you're going to do with them. We have been recycling them because sometimes we don't like what they say, and then we want to cross-check them or second guess with another set of consultants, and that takes time. And this has been the play of things in many state-owned entities. It is not SAA alone. So this is the dilemma that we face that comes under the absence of this overriding governance and policy framework that says this is how SOEs are going to be run. Until we get there, we'll still be dealing with these isolated incidents of breach that you're talking about. For me, it is not important really. These issues are not important because they're not going to contribute to the solution of the SOEs. It is the ecosystem that has to be fixed. Policy. Why do you need them? What for? How should they be governed? Etc. For example, an entity like SAA requires a board that consists of people who have industry experience, deep industry experience. Now, you tell me which of the boards had that type of qualification? None. Now, with that type of situation, then you are asking for trouble. Totally, you're asking for trouble because airline business is one that requires agility of action and thinking and understanding of the market and how it varies, and it changes quickly. And it's a very, very, very dangerous environment. Companies fold because of wrong decisions that are made in times when things are not properly thought of. Right. SAA has been suffering from that.
Sabelo,
so we actually did these things to ourselves.
Sabelo, locate this conversation for us in context of the breakdown in other institutions as well. I mean, when I was listening to Cheryl Carolas talking about charges that were laid as a result of a forensic investigation that had been done, and to this day, you and I have never attended a court case where where that forensic report was presented, as part of a court case. What's the location there of how does this fit with the rest of the repurposing and weakening of institutions elsewhere?
Well, I mean, I think, in terms of the timing then, it was a very typical thing. I mean, if you look at the time when SAA was very unstable, or rather when the instability returned to SAA, is about the same time that the acting chairperson, Vuyisile Kona, who was acting CEO at the time, had been suspended. This was after that, that meeting that he'd had with the Gupta brothers, and they had tried, to induce him by giving him half a million rand in cash. At that time, if you then look at what we know now about what was happening in Transnet, for instance, and what was happening in Eskom, it's almost as if, the tentacles were working at the same time throughout all of these SOEs, and basically destroying good governance, destroying structures within, the organizations themselves. And I think one point that I'd actually also like to make, and I know a lot has been said about management and performance at SAA. For instance, one of the most interesting and intriguing things for me is the fact that throughout all of this instability that has been happening right at the top of the airline has been consistently winning awards for being one of the most on-time airlines across the entire world. Yeah. That means that
so
the guys that are working.
Been there.
Yes, it means that the guys that are working know what they're doing. The pilots are flying on time. Everyone is in ship-shape tape, But at the very top is where the problem is.
All right, let me pause you there for a moment and bring into this conversation Sam Kokeli, who speaks on behalf of the Department of Public Enterprises and has been listening to this conversation and would like to add to it. Sam Kokeli, thank you for joining us. So let me suggest to you, SAA is dead, man. SAA is dead. What do you say to that?
Absolutely, my brother, and thanks for the opportunity. You're having a wonderful conversation there with the two gentlemen who know the history of the organization inside out. SAA, absolutely, as we know it, is dead. We know why SAA is where it is, and there are twin problems, as the gentleman and you have said. It's one, poor performance, commercial performance over a very long time, and the other one is state capture. So there have been decisive decisions on the part of government to solve the problem. The main thing is that the board of directors decided to take SAA into rescue, business rescue, that enjoys the support of our cabinet and broadly all of our government. The intention is to rescue the company and change it altogether as we know it. So we have a very terrible negative past that can be crippling when we look at it by itself. But we need to look at the opportunities that are there in the ashes of the old SAA. Air transport, the aviation industry is very critical to the South African economy. We could say, in the back of beyond as a nation, and it's almost difficult to connect us with our key trading partners and in the entire global village. So the conversation has changed quite a bit. We have accepted the death of the SAA as we know it, but something totally new is in the offing here. We have to sort of almost be aware when we look at the crippling history at the exciting future.
Almost out of time, Sam Kokeli. You're saying something exciting in the offing. Let me also suggest to you that you just don't have the money to pay for this something new and exciting in the offing. You don't have it.
Julius, nobody has enough money to deal with the competing needs we have as a nation. At the same time, we do not have the money to achieve the opposite of what you would suggest is the opposite of shutting down SAA. It could be way more expensive, way more catastrophic. You're talking about 10,000 employees who lose their jobs and who would get a pittance in terms of severance packages. What you have, Julius, is a plan that has been endorsed by creditors, people who know a lot about business. They say the plan to change SAA into a new animal is viable. It's a good way to go. The government has committed to avail the resources. So in essence, the money is there, but there's a trade-off. Trade-offs are naturally very, very painful, tough decision. The money will be availed. It comes at a cost. And you have properly figured where the cost is and comes from. It comes from this terrible history of state capture and poor performance, and we need to be excited about at the same time.
All right, when will the money be there? Two-word answer, Sam Kokeli, I'm out of time. When will the money be there? 10 billion rand.
The matter of government in the coming budget, midterm budget, will make a very clear announcement about the money.
Sam Kokeli, thank you for tuning in and calling in. He speaks on behalf of the Department of Public Enterprises. And I've got to thank Sabelo Skiti for taking part in this conversation. And Thabang Motsohi, I really appreciate your insights in as far as issues that state-owned enterprises are concerned. Coming up, Rohio Madzena comes back to report on what you've been saying about the corruption scorecard and who is responsible for SAA's collapse. Stand by for that.